Good evening. Good evening, everyone. This is Christian Conservative with KJ. And of course, I'm KJ, your host. This is your space for biblical clarity on news and pop culture. You can watch as I do a deep dive in culture, politics, and trending news from a biblical perspective. So hit that subscribe button if you have not already done so. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get it here first. All right, I'm not going to keep you guys long tonight. I want to talk about some breaking news with this whole trans movement. I want to start with Megyn Kelly. She has really been at the forefront of this movement. Megyn Kelly really taking a deep dive into all of the fallacies that a lot of the activists within this movement have pushed out to the public. And here she is now going a little bit deeper, specifically talking about the Supreme Court case that is before the justices this week. All right, take a look here as she talks to I believe he is the Attorney General for Tennessee, where this law came out of. Basically, they said that they were not going to allow in Tennessee trans surgeries on minors. And now it's before the Supreme Court where they are weighing in on that and more. So here she is talking about some of the things going on with this, actually coming out of this week from both sides. All right, here we are. So let's see here.
Good for you, sir, for defending this. And this is a hugely important case. So how do you think it went yesterday?
I think it went great. You never want to prognosticate. The justices will spend months talking through this, and you just never know how it's going to turn out. But we put on a very strong case. I thought the questions were probing in a way that gets to the truth of the matter. And I'm looking forward to the court's decision.
We heard in that soundbite it just played with Justice Alito, the other side admit that gender affirming care, again, this is a misnomer, does not reduce suicides. It does not reduce suicide. So this is what they've been telling. Like, the truth comes out in court. Mm-hmm. But what they've been saying everywhere in the public eye is we have to allow these puberty blockers and these cross-sex hormones because these kids will kill themselves. They will kill themselves. They use this to manipulate parents. And there in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, it's admitted right there by a so-called trans attorney that this so-called care does not reduce suicides. What a moment.
I think it's the most important thing that happened in the oral argument. Usually the briefing is what really drives the outcome in the case, and the argument is just to cover a few little loose ends. But we've heard for years, you can either have a live son or a dead daughter, and parents have been essentially threatened, and kids have kept hearing over and over again that suicide was the appropriate reaction to not transitioning. And of course, suicide is a social contagion phenomenon. The more kids hear it, the more risk there is. And so to have the truth out there for everybody to hear on the record that suicide is not, in fact, the expected outcome, that this treatment, so-called treatment, does nothing to address the instances of suicide was huge. That's going to make a lasting difference in this conversation.
And then you've got Sonia Sotomayor comparing the castration of little boys to there are risks in taking an aspirin. Here's that.
And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
Wow.
Let me ask you something, General. There'd be no question that you could pass a law in Tennessee saying you can't sell fentanyl in pill form over the counter right next to Band-Aids. There'd be no question that you would be allowed to do that in Tennessee and every state. So clearly there is the ability to regulate certain medications and drugs, even something as gentle potentially as an aspirin. So this is a sliding scale. The fentanyl would be a no. The aspirin can be on the shelf. And the question is, where does the gender affirming so-called care, medications and so on fall? Can you explain to the audience why the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones are closer to the fentanyl than they are to the aspirin?
Be my pleasure. So every systematic review of the evidence has shown little to no benefit for kids from these procedures, from puberty blockers, from hormone treatments, from surgeries. It's still relatively new. Most of the cases have been coming up recently. The numbers have exploded, but all the research out there, when systematically reviewed and analyzed, shows no benefit. And meanwhile, the risks are huge. Kids on these drugs face the permanent loss of their fertility, the permanent loss of their sexual function for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
They face, depending on which treatment we're talking about, tumors, blood clots, cognitive impairment for the rest of their lives, bone density disorders. So these are serious conditions, and children are not in a position to make those big decisions. We don't let them get tattoos. We don't let them use alcohol. We don't let them consume tobacco products because they're too young to fully appreciate the effect that will have on their future. Meanwhile, these are incredibly consequential drug regimes that will affect their body forever and ever. The research shows that it's not actually treating the condition it's purported to treat, and the risks are enormous. And that is why Tennessee outlawed these for kids.
This is a lengthy exchange, but I am going to play it, an exchange between Justice Alito and the Solicitor General for the Biden administration. Biden administration is on the trans team, not the Tennessee team. That's about to change when Trump takes over, but right now we are where we are. So he really went after her on what I think he believed was a misrepresentation in their brief to the court. Take a listen to this, SOT 36.
Let's go.
Well, can I ask you a question about the state of medical evidence at the present time? In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote: "Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria." That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following: "They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments," which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here.
So I want to stop it for just a second. So do you see how these activists and this trans lobby, they give incorrect information? They do not give the data that we know across the country. In Europe, they've stopped these procedures for minors. They don't even allow that anymore because it does that much harm. But again, they try to cover these things up. And the question that I have is why? We know that these procedures, they do more harm than good to minors. Okay. And arguably adults too. But for minors, definitely the research shows that they do more harm than good. So then why are they continuing to push this on minors? And we have breaking news out of Baltimore today that I'm going to get into in just a moment, where this road leads. But again, for you guys who have just joined, Megyn Kelly is talking to Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti about the oral arguments between the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday and the highly contentious case regarding trans medical care for minors. The apparent partisan divide on the issue among the Supreme Court justices and what the result of this case could mean for trans issues in America. And they're huge. This is huge because, as you will see in just a moment, they're trying to push this in schools. They're trying to indoctrinate this in public schools across the country. If this case comes down on the wrong side, if they say that this Tennessee law, which restricts trans surgeries on minors, is unconstitutional, we're going to see this type of stuff spread like wildfire across the country. And it's already happening here in Baltimore. I want to take you to more of this exchange.
Outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful. But I stand by that there is a consensus that these treatments can be medically necessary for some adolescents, and that's true no matter what source you look at.
That's not true.
So she didn't disavow her clearly false statement to the court about the alleged overwhelming evidence that the benefits outweigh the harms.
So what we're looking at in this situation is a conflict between what the evidence tells us and what the consensus tells us. And we've got this manufactured consensus where very biased activists have managed to get all of the major medical organizations to buy in to their approach through a very circular process. Meanwhile, they're suppressing research showing the actual efficacy of this for kids, and they are ignoring developments in countries that have pioneered these procedures that used to make them very available to kids and now are restricting them because they looked at the evidence. And Steve Marshall, the Alabama Attorney General, had an amicus brief in this case that really laid out the process and that showed that the medical guidelines that are being used here were written not by doctors, but largely by policy advocates, by social justice lawyers, and by people within the Biden administration who are lobbying for the most ideologically aligned outcomes.
And I just want to stop it here. I want you guys to see the comparison. Remember the food pyramid? Remember how they told us, based off of the food pyramid, that we are supposed to eat a lot of grains and things like that. And then it comes to find out, most of the food pyramid was based off of grains, carbohydrates, and things like that. And then we found out that a lot of it was not based off of science, was not based off of medical advice, but it was based off of lobbying by the grain and the milk, the cheese and dairy farms, things like that. And so actually these things are not best for us to eat or to have our diet totally maintained in this type of food. So we're seeing this happen here as well. We're seeing how activists have taken over in the medical field and they've pushed pseudoscience. They've pushed a lot of data that is not actually correct. And then they are trying to use this to form public policy behind it. And it's all because of money. Money is the real key. Money is behind all of this. They know that with these procedures, these children, if they go ahead with this, will be in the medical field through surgeries, through pharmaceuticals for the rest of their lives. They are golden gooses for this industry, and they don't care how it affects them long term. That's what they see are dollar signs. All right, I'll continue here.
Rather than delving into the evidence and making an evidence-based decision about what's best for kids.
it's truly horrifying how our medical organizations have been captured by these activists who are trying to set policy for our children, for the chopping off of body parts for the most vulnerable among us. And then confused parents go to a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist or psychologist for help, and they are put on a path of severe danger.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just it goes to a broader problem with America's elite, which maybe is outside the scope of this conversation, but they are just divorced from reality. We're supposed to embrace evidence-based medicine. We're supposed to look at the evidence when making those determinations, and this is kind of a Trojan horse. It's they dress it up to look legitimate in every possible way, but it's empty in the middle. I guess it's not like the Trojan horse at all, actually. But they're transporting these radical ideological beliefs in the guise of legitimate medical research.
And again, this is what I want to say. This is what they did with the food pyramid. So if you guys remember, I think it was back in the 1990s. The food pyramid was a visual representation of the food groups. And it basically was based off of fats and oils top the pyramid. Rounding it out was, supposed to be a balanced diet. So it was basically advising us to eat 2 to 3 servings of dairy products, 2 to 3 servings of proteins like red meats, eggs, beans, and nuts. And then I think it was like 6 to 11 servings of rice, bread, and pasta. So it was a terrible combination that has led to people getting diabetes. Not only diabetes, but being overweight and things like that. And so once people were able to actually dig into it, it was not based off of any type of diet, healthy diet or medical advice. It was created by corporate lobbyists. And it had been promoted by the US government, even the UN since then. But it was all done by lobbyists because it was done to push money. By money. They wanted people to buy in on these processed foods and things like that in order for them to get enriched. And this is what it was. I even remember the food pyramid. It was actually pushed in schools, like they're trying to push this trans agenda in schools. You have these sex ed teachers and so-called counselors pushing it in schools. And then once they do that, more and more kids are now identifying as non-binary, as trans. And if you, the parent, do not affirm this identity that's actually being groomed upon these children, they take your kid. They take your kid from you. And that's actually true. It's happened here. There have been cases here all across the country, also here in Maryland. They take your child. Take a look here.
And that is having a really profound impact on thousands of kids. The numbers have gone up spectacularly, very dramatically, a 4,000% increase in adolescent girls looking for hormone treatments, according to one researcher. And as the numbers go up for unexplained reasons, more and more evidence comes out showing that this is harmful. Other countries have pumped the brakes. And here we are with the White House, with the major medical associations, with the American Bar Association, with all sorts of very powerful institutional players in this country pushing in the other direction, essentially trying to get everyone to ignore the evidence and pursue this ideological end.
Yeah, and he's telling the truth. Many countries in Europe have stopped this. So due to ongoing independent review, this is according to the U.S. News and World Report of Gender Identity Services for Youth in the UK, commissioned by its public health authority, minors, they have stopped it in multiple countries. So Sweden, Norway, and several other countries are changing their guidelines in part due to questions and risk of these procedures. So, they're stopping this. And the U.S. is trying to encourage it. Here we are.
Great cost to children.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach.
All right. So I wanted to bring that to you guys. And some breaking news here in Baltimore City, Maryland, where I am. So out here today, Fox News is reporting Baltimore City Schools use taxpayer dollars to pay a sex education consultant who said children as young as 3 years old can identify as transgender. So in fiscal year 2020, the city sent $20,000 of federal funds to Nora Gelperin, the director of sexual education and training for Advocates for Youth, according to the Baltimore Board of Estimates document obtained through a public information request by Spotlight on Maryland. Gelperin co-wrote Advocates for Youth Rights, Respect, Responsibility, Sex Education Curriculum. Wow. City schools use 3 R's in its elementary and middle schools, which feature lessons on gender identity in 1st grade and transgenderism in 6th grade. So we wonder why these children are popping up all over the place, calling themselves non-binary and crap. The Baltimore Board of Estimates document detailed city schools' funding and operational costs as part of the You Choose program, which aims to lower local teen birth and STI rates. The document specified the consultant payment to Gelperin was used to hire Advocates for Youth to assist with sustainability of the programs, which includes planning for the high school requirement to move from a 0.5 credit to 0.1 credit. You Choose's website refers minors to transgender and abortion clinics. Oh my God. I'm just reading this like as you are, guys are getting it. As previously reported by Spotlight on Maryland, the Baltimore City Health Department administers the You Choose funds. Other partners in the program include, guess who? Planned Parenthood. Surprise, surprise. In 2022 interview with former New Jersey News 12 reporter Alex Zand, Gelperin said children as young as 3 years old are capable of identifying as transgender. Kids that are transgender at the ages 3, 4, 5 are able to say they feel like their body is wrong. Folks, keep your kids out of these schools. She also says they feel like something is different with them. How they identify on the inside does not match with what they see on the outside. And that's why you'll see some kids start to socially transition in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Wow. Gelperin spoke in February at a virtual event on sex education in elementary schools hosted by an activist group called Red, Wine, and Blue. She claimed most kindergartners already have varying gender identities and need to be further informed about the concept of gender identity. Wow. Wow. This is what we're talking about. Do you see how they are trying to manipulate our children? Do you all see this? This is in school where they're supposed to be learning about math, science, English, things like this. They're not even doing a good job in teaching them that. But they're pushing this gender ideology on them as much as they can. Wow. This is sick. It's sick. And my question again is, why? Why? Why are they doing this? Why are they coming after the children? Second, my throat. All right. This is ridiculous. So it says here, Advocates for Youth openly pushes for access to hormone blockers, transgender hormone usage, and transgender surgeries for minors. The Maryland Department of Education paid Advocates for Youth in 2021 to adjust its 3 R's curriculum to align with Maryland education standards. The Maryland 3 R's teaches kindergartners about gender identity. Okay, and I said this. All right. This is it, folks. This is it. Let me see here. One second. I want to show you exactly where I'm getting this from so you can see. Yeah. So this is right here on Fox 45 News. Both You Choose and Advocates for Youth are bankrolled by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So this is why it's so important. Donald Trump has been trying to get rid of these bureaucracies, or at least get a firmer handle on them, because they are pushing this type of nonsense. So the Baltimore City Health Department has received more than $15 million from HHS for You Choose since 2015, and is set for another $7.3 million through 2028. Advocates for Youth has received more than $30 million from HHS since 1995. Galpern has long been a leading advocate for teaching gender identity in schools. She wrote an educational lesson plan in 2009 titled "Telling Your Parents I'm Transgender." This is what Megyn Kelly was talking about. These people have an agenda. They already have an agenda for our children. So this is why it's important for us as parents to have an agenda too, to keep them away from this stuff. You wonder why now these surgeries and things are exploding with children taking them, because they're being kind of guided towards that way in school. And they're influenced by this heavily because they're in school for the predominance of their day. Galpern previously worked as a community educator. Oh my gosh. For what? Guess where? Planned Parenthood, which claims to be the nation's top provider of sex education, which they're not. They're the top provider of abortion. Wow. And then the second thing is LGBT sex. So this is why. This is why we have this going on in our schools, folks. This is why it's reached the Supreme Court, because they have activists like this in the schools from kindergarten on up, pushing this on the children. And now we've seen an explosion in LGBT, non-binary, trans movement in children, because they're telling them this. They're leading them down this road. They're telling them this is okay to do. So there you have it. And I'll tell you why it's exploding. I'll tell you why they're doing this. And I've talked about this previously on the show. There is a connection to transhumanism. So these experimental transgender surgeries, drugs, hormones, and implants could be considered human enhancement. And so human enhancement is something the military is they want to get involved with. Medical research and experimentation, they want to get more involved with this and push this. They research with this because it's part of this whole idea of transhumanism, combining robots and human. Also, if the body wears down or becomes some type of issue, fusing robot, fusing machine with humans. What do you think this whole transgender thing is? It's a degradation of the body. Again, this is all the spirit of the Antichrist. It is the spirit of the Antichrist, because what they're doing is they're going against God's design for our bodies. The body has purpose, and dignity and value. So by accepting a demeaning and degrading view of the body, which this whole trans movement is, they're cutting off their breasts, they're cutting off their genitals. This is what it is. It's a devaluation of the body, because if you lessen the value in the body, then you're more likely to fuse it with machine. So let's say, oh, my arm hurts. I have a torn rotator cuff, or I have some type of chronic pain in my arm. It's still usable, but it's not 100%. Well, in the future, why not just cut your arm off, get rid of that limb, add on a mechanical arm of some sort, or robotic arm. And before you know it, we'll have people walking around here, 50% human, 50% machine. And in order to push this, they have to devalue the body. They have to make it seem like it's not a big deal, as we saw with Supreme Court Justice, the Latino woman on the Supreme Court, as we saw her mention today, how she was like, oh, what's the difference? She's compared it to getting a haircut by chopping off your breasts. Yeah, she's going to do that because this is the goal. This is where they want to move us to. They want us to get it in our psyche, starting with kids, because if they do this with kids are the future. If they are able to change their thinking about the body, then they will be able to say, oh, okay, well, it'll be an outpatient procedure. Go on, chop off your leg, put on some type of machine or some type of mechanical leg. This is where we're going. So, people, one of the things that we need to start doing as parents, is teaching our children to have a high view of the body. It contributes to our identity. Okay, these other movements rest on a devaluation of the body. Are we products of blind, material, purposeless, mindless forces in which your body has no intrinsic purpose and you can do with it with whatever you want? Or is the body the product of a loving creator for which it has intrinsic purpose? And we will be happier and healthier when we live according to that purpose, with that plan and that design. The creator's plan and design for us, not only the body, but for relationship with him, relationship with me as a woman, with a man, relationship with our children. So this is what it is, folks. This is what they're doing. All right. And we have here 1 Corinthians 6:18-20 says, flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. What? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which it is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. That's exactly right. That again was 1 Corinthians 6:18-20. That's the King James Version. We know, folks, that our Messiah came down in human form. That has value there. That's significant. He didn't have to do it. He came down in human form because the body is significant. Again, 1 Corinthians 6:20, for ye are bought with a price, and therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit. It's right there. So again, this is the spirit of the Antichrist. This is what they're trying to get us to do, and they're using the children to do it. So I wanted to bring this to you all today. We have to be serious about this. We have to, get involved and push back against this. This is not something to just say, oh, it's just temporary, or it's not a big deal, or, oh, it's just happening in Baltimore. It's not going to happen here in Indiana or South Carolina. It's coming. They're not giving up. We have a reprieve right now because Trump won the presidency, but they're just going to go back to their bunkers and they're going to start planning to do more after these next 4 years. And we have to be ready. We have to be ready. All right, folks. So again, this is Christian Conservative with KJ. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and hit the notification button so you know when I post new content. Again, this is your space for biblical clarity on news and pop culture. We got to get on this, folks. Like I said, the generational destruction of families is immeasurable. It's immeasurable, particularly when males decide to pretend they aren't male. It's tragic. And again, the same with women. Women destroying their biological gifts with toxic drugs that give them facial hair and a deeper voice, while destroying their futures is heartbreaking. It is. Most of this medication that they're giving our girls, they'll never be able to have children. The boys, cutting off your private areas and things. We are destroying our country with this. And Christians need to stand up against it more. And this is the Democrat Party doing it. This is the Democrat, at least the Republicans, most of them are pushing back. There's a small few that are not, but most of Republicans, most of conservatives are pushing back. The Democrats are going for this hook, line, and sinker. And you don't have to believe me. When Biden first got into office, who he invite to the White House was Dylan Mulvaney. And that's the poster child for trans movement. So there it is. All right. Again, thank you guys for watching. Please continue to pray. God, please heal our nation and restore these families that are under assault. Send your angels to put a hedge of protection around our children. Fill them with your Holy Spirit and protect them from evil seen and unseen. Again, thank you for watching with me tonight. Until next time, wishing you warm days and starry nights. Good night.